Come on. So next week is Easter, and this week technically is what's called Palm Sunday. So those that are here can see, maybe online you might be able to see there's one palm at the back there, there's a few over there. I always remember, I used to love this week because my mum used to get sort of strands of palms. I think they probably weren't even, I don't know if they were really palm, and she would, and we'd do that. You've done that? Yeah. I remember doing that as a kid.
My mum tried to teach me.
Your mum tried to teach you, it didn't work, hey? Mum was quite good at it and got us all of us kids, and there were a lot of us kids, doing that and make these palms, and it was part of sort of the whole thing on Palm Sunday. The other thing I do remember is that at church they would read through the story of Easter. And last week we read through a chunk of it, chapter 18 of John's Gospel. And today I'm going to get Chris up to read chapter 19 to us, which is Jesus' death, what happens when he's crucified. What I want you to do, sit back, listen. We'll have the words up there for you as well, so you can look if you're like me, part deaf, and you can't always catch all the words. But have a look at afterwards. There'll be a test. No, there won't be a test. But I'll ask some questions about what did you see? Because truth is, I've heard this story so many times now that I think it's a bit blasé sometimes. But then I read it again and I find new things. And it's good to do that, isn't it? So listen up and see if you can find some new things. Chris, if you can come and read for us, and I'll have to give you this little thing here so you can be heard over there as well.
Okay, I think we're ready. So, John 19. Then therefore, Pilate, is that right? Yeah. Then therefore, Pilate took Jesus and flogged him. Then the soldiers, having twisted together a crown of thorns, put it on his head and cast around him a purple robe. And they were coming up to him, saying, "Hail, King of Jews!" And they were slapping him. Pilate came outside again and said to the Jews, "Behold, I bring him outside to you, that you may know that I find no fault in him." Therefore Jesus came outside, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. And Pilate said to them, "Behold the man." Therefore, when they saw him, the chief priests and the officers cried out, saying, "Crucify, crucify." And Pilate said to them, "Take him yourself and crucify him, for I find no fault in him." The Jews answered him, "We have a law, and according to the law he ought to die, because he made himself Son of God." Therefore, when Pilate heard this word, he was more afraid. He entered the praetorium again and said to Jesus, "Where are you from?" But Jesus did not give him an answer. Therefore Pilate said to him, "You do not speak to me? Don't you know I have the authority to release you, and I have the authority to crucify you?" And Jesus answered him, "You would not have one bit of authority over me if it were not given to you from above. Because of this, the ones who handed me over to you have greater sin." Because of this, Pilate sought to release him. The Jews cried out, saying, "If you release this one, you are no friend of Caesar. Everyone who makes himself king opposes Caesar." And therefore Pilate, hearing these words, brought Jesus outside and sat upon the judgment seat in a place called the Stone Pavement, in Hebrew, Gabbatha. It was the day of preparation for the Passover, about the 6th hour. And he said to the Jews, "Behold your king." And therefore they cried out, "Away, away, crucify him." And Pilate said to them, "You would crucify your king?" The chief priests answered him, "We have no king if not Caesar." And then he handed him over to them that they might crucify him. They took Jesus, and carrying his own cross, he came out to the place of the skull, called in Hebrew Golgotha, where they crucified him with another two, one on one side and on the other, with Jesus in the middle. Pilate wrote a title and put it on the cross. It was written, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. And therefore many of the Jews read this title, for the place he was crucified was near the city. And it was written in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek. The chief priests of the Jews said to Pilate, "Do not write the King of the Jews." But this one said that he was the King of the Jews. And Pilate answered, "What I have written, I have written." Then the soldiers, when they crucified Jesus, took the garments and made 4 parts, and also the tunic. Now the tunic was seamless, woven from the top through all. So they said to one another, "Let us not tear it, but let us cast lots for it, whose it will be." And what is written might be fulfilled, which said, "They divided my clothes among them, and for my garment they cast lots." Therefore the soldiers did these things. Standing before the cross was Jesus' mother and his mother's sister Mary, the wife of Cleopas, and Mary Magdalene. Seeing his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing alongside, Jesus said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." And then he said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour he took his mother into his own home. After this, seeing that already all had been completed, and that it might be fulfilled what was written, he said, "I am thirsty." A vessel had been set there, full of sour wine, and having put a sponge on a stalk of hyssop, they filled it with sour wine, and brought it to his mouth. When therefore Jesus had taken the sour wine, he said, "It is finished." And having bowed his head, he gave up his spirit. The Jews therefore, because it was the day of preparation, so that the bodies would not remain on the cross on the Sabbath, for it was a special Sabbath, they asked Pilate that their legs might be broken and their bodies might be taken away. Therefore the soldiers came and broke the legs of the first and the other, having been crucified with him. However, having come to Jesus, they saw that he was already dead, and they did not break his legs. But one of the soldiers pierced him with his spear, and immediately blood and water came out. The one having seen this has testified, and his testimony is true, and he knows that he is speaking truth, that you might also believe. For these things took place that the scripture might be fulfilled, not one of his bones will be broken. And again, another scripture, they will look on the one they have pierced. After these things, Joseph of Arimathea, who was a secret disciple of Jesus because of fear of the Jews, asked Pilate that he might take Jesus' body. Pilate gave permission, so he came and took away his body. Nicodemus also came, the one having first come to him by night, carrying a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100 litres. Cool. Oh, there's more.
That's right.
I didn't quite get it. Okay, I'll read it from up there. Sorry about that. Therefore he took Jesus' body and bound it in linen cloths with the spices, just as the custom is for the Jew to prepare for burial. Now there was in the place where he was crucified a garden, and in the garden a new tomb in which no one had yet been laid. Because the tomb was near, they laid Jesus there on account of the day of preparation of the Jews.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. I'll turn it around, that'll be better. So, listening to that, was there anything that you saw that you may not have seen before? Anything you picked up?
John seems to highlight the Jews more so than the Romans. Like, as in
John definitely picks on the Jews more than the Romans. Yes, that's what she's saying, that the Romans sort of looks like they get off scot-free. And it's the fault of the Jews, isn't it? And he even says that one time, that, it's more the fault of those who sent me to you.
Like Pilate is reluctant even.
Pilate's very reluctant, isn't he? In fact, although, and I don't know if you noticed this, because I just translated that, and so you notice a lot when you do that. They flogged Jesus even before Pilate thought he was guilty. Did you notice that? They had him flogged, and Pilate goes out and says, I don't find him guilty. That's just stunning, isn't it? And that may appease the Jews. Certainly is that idea there. But you're right, the Jews keep hammering that. Now, John's the only one that says the Jews did that. The others say that it was the Pharisees and the leaders, the chief priests, and all those do that sort of stuff. John just says the Jews. It's probably because his audience is a bit later, and there's been a bit more distance between the Christian church and their Jewish roots. But yes, very interesting, isn't it? Is there anything else anyone saw there that they go, that was interesting?
I also noticed there's a lot of, fulfill the prophets.
Lots of fulfilling of the prophetic, isn't there? There is a lot, yes. Matthew and John do that a lot. That's right.
There's a play with Behold the Man and Behold your King.
Yes, definitely. There's something there about, behold, here's the man you picked on, and behold the king, you know. Whether there's irony in behold your king, I think there is a little bit in the way Pilate presents that. But certainly, because he knows that they don't think he's the king. But certainly there is something to that, isn't there?
It's like, call him just a man, then, you know, that's what they say, he's not a man, says the king, well, he's your king, you know.
Yes, that's right. And there is a bit of a play of what's being said and meant by the people and what's real. Because behold the man who is the real king.
He's the Son of Man.
Yeah, the Son of God. And they accuse him of saying that he was Son of God, don't they? Which is interesting.
And it's interesting that they put, like Pilate for King of the Jews, that was his
Yeah.
crime in a way. If it wasn't.
The King of the Jews, yeah, what was his crime? Being the King of the Jews. And I love that what the Jews say to him, oh, don't say that. Don't, just say this man said he was. What I have written, I've written. I don't think Pilate cares much for them either. Does he?
But in that, he's like God's making the truth come out.
Yes, and that's right. Every time you see here, and that's very much a motif happening here, and it was last week too when we looked at John 18, that people are saying one thing and they're accidentally saying the truth. The truth of it all, which is great. And that's very much what happens in this space. In fact, can I say, John, the writer of the gospel, actually says that right near the beginning of the gospel. They're in the darkness, but they keep doing, basically saying, they do God's will, though they don't mean to. So you're talking about there, can I say you're not talking about this one we looked at just then, though, John, so we'll just keep to the one we did just then at the moment, if that's all right. I get that, but we can talk about that later. That's all right. All right, so is there anything else you had?
It's absurd that the Jews say we have no king but Caesar.
That, yes. So there's a really big thing there, isn't there? We have no king but Caesar.
They're afraid to say anything else because they're under Roman rule.
Yes. Well, they know that that's the thing that will get Pilate to do what they want. Because anyone that says they're king, that's big trouble in Caesar's eyes. Even though last week, those that weren't here last week, Jesus had the conversation with Pilate about his kingdom. He said, my kingdom's not of this world. And Pilate sort of got that and could see that he wasn't making himself a king here and now. But that they say that is really important in the story, isn't it? Forces along the story, and Pilate has to do stuff now because he knows he'll be in deep trouble if he lets go someone who said that they were king, and word gets to Caesar. One tiny thing that I noticed that I'd never actually seen before, which is quite incredible. I didn't realise that his aunt was there. Jesus' aunt was at the foot of the cross.
To say Mary's sister who was married to...
No. just the way I said, it's actually, there was Mary's sister, then there was Mary, wife of Clopas, who's a different woman again. Because Mary doesn't have a sister named Mary.
No.
That'd be very confusing. So there's actually a group of them there. But I actually didn't realize that his aunt was there until I translated it. That's his aunt. Wow. That's a very minor thing, isn't it? So one thing I noticed when I looked at this, because, like I said, translating, you have to look at it in depth. John constantly talks about a thing called the Day of Preparation. Yeah, you might have seen that. It's the very last words he said, in fact, if you look at it. Let's go back one. On account of the Day of Preparation of the Jews. It's also some of the first words he said in the whole piece. It's interesting. He says it 3 times there and a couple of times in the chapter before. Do you think that's important? I think it's important why he would say that. I think it is. So what I actually want to do today is have a look at that idea. Because there's a few things John's trying to do here in his depiction of Jesus dying, trying to tell us. But very much this is one of the main things he's trying to tell us. That this was the day of the preparation for the lambs of the Passover. That's what it's saying. But to explain that, we sort of have to go back a fair bit. So I am not going to myself explain all of the Exodus story to you, because I thought that would be a wonderful thing if I could do it quickly enough, but I reckon it would take me more than a sermon's worth. But there's a lovely group of people called the Bible Project, and they do excellent little pieces, and I've got a piece for us on that. So Ben, if you can put it up and get it ready, and you'll have to then turn that on and I'll stop speaking, and we'll watch. Tell us when you're ready, Ben.
The book of Exodus. It's the second book of the Bible, and it picks up the storyline from the previous book, Genesis, which ended with Abraham's grandson, Jacob, leading his large family of 70 people down to Egypt. Now, Jacob's 11th son, Joseph, had been elevated to second in command over Egypt, and he had saved his whole family in a famine. And so Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, offered the family to come live there as a safe haven. And so eventually Jacob dies there in Egypt, and Joseph and all his brothers do too. About 400 years pass, and the story of the Exodus begins. Now that name refers to the event that takes place in the first half of the book, Israel's exodus from Egypt. But the book has a second half that takes place at the foot of Mount Sinai. In this video, we'll just focus on the first half, where centuries have passed, and the Israelites were fruitful and multiplied, and they filled the land. Now, this line is a deliberate echo back to the blessing that God gave all humanity back in the Garden of Eden. And it reminds us of the big biblical story so far. Humanity forfeited God's blessing through sin and rebellion, and so God chose Abraham's family as the vehicle through which he would restore his blessing to all the world. But the new Pharaoh does not view Israel as a blessing. He actually thinks this growing Israelite immigrant group is a threat to his power. And so just as in Genesis, humanity rebels against God's blessing, so here, Pharaoh attempts to destroy the source of God's blessing, the Israelites. He brutally enslaves them in forced labor, and then he orders that all the Israelite boys be drowned in the Nile River. Now, Pharaoh, he is the worst character in the Bible so far. His kingdom epitomizes humanity's rebellion against God. Pharaoh has so redefined good and evil according to his own interests that even the murder of innocent children has become good to him. And so Egypt has become worse than Babylon from the book of Genesis. And so now Israel cries out for help against this new Babylon, and God responds. God first turns Pharaoh's evil upside down as an Israelite mother throws her boy into the Nile River, but in a basket. And so he floats safely right down into Pharaoh's own family. He's named Moses, and he grows up to eventually become the man that God will use to defeat Pharaoh's evil. In the famous story of the burning bush, God appears to Moses and commissions him to go to Pharaoh and order him to release the Israelites. And God says that he knows Pharaoh will resist, and so he will bring his judgment on Egypt in the form of plagues. then God also says that he will harden Pharaoh's heart. And so we're introduced into the next main part of the story, the confrontation between God and Pharaoh. Now, what does this mean, that God says he'll harden Pharaoh's heart? It's super important to read this section of the story really closely and in sequence. In Moses and Pharaoh's first encounter, we're told simply that Pharaoh's heart grew hard. There's no implication that God did anything. And so in response, God sends the first set of 5 plagues, each one confronting Pharaoh and one of his Egyptian gods. And each time, Moses offers a chance for Pharaoh to humble himself and to let the Israelites go. But after each plague, we're told that Pharaoh either hardened his heart or that his heart grew hard. He's doing this of his own will. And so eventually, it's with the second set of 5 plagues that we begin to hear how God hardened Pharaoh's heart. So the point of the story seems to be this. Even though God knew that Pharaoh would resist his will, God still offered him all of these chances to do the right thing. But eventually, Pharaoh's evil reaches a point of no return. I mean, even his own advisors think that he has lost his mind. And it's at that point that God takes over and bends Pharaoh's evil towards his own redemptive purposes. God lures Pharaoh into his own destruction as he saves his people, which is what happens next. With the final plague, it's the night of Passover, and God turns the tables on Pharaoh. Just as he killed the sons of the Israelites, so God will kill the firstborn in Egypt with a final plague. But unlike Pharaoh, God provides a means of escape through the blood of the Lamb. And here the story stops and introduces us in detail to the annual Israelite ritual of Passover. On the night before Israel left Egypt, they sacrificed a young, spotless lamb and painted its blood on the doorframe of their house. And when the divine plague came over Egypt, the houses covered with the blood of the lamb were passed over, and the sun spared. And so every year since, the Israelites have reenacted that night to remember and to celebrate God's justice and his mercy. But Pharaoh, because of his pride and rebellion, he loses his own son. And he's compelled to finally let the Israelites go free. And so the Israelite slaves make their exodus from Egypt. But no sooner do they leave that Pharaoh changes his mind, and he gathers his army and chases after the Israelites for a final showdown. As the Israelites pass through the waters of the sea safely, Pharaoh charges towards his own destruction. The Exodus story concludes with the first song of praise in the Bible. It's called the Song of the Sea. And the final line declares that the Lord reigns as king. And then the song retells in poetry what the story of God's kingdom is all about. It's about how God is on a mission to confront evil in his world and to redeem those who are enslaved to evil. God is going to bring his people into the promised land where his divine presence will live among them. This story is what it looks like when God becomes king over his people.
Now, Ben, you might want to turn me off quickly there. Sorry about that. Oh, there we go. What do you think of that? That was quite a good overview, wasn't it? Quite well done. And can I say, I see a whole lot of stuff that was just like our story. So what I thought we might do is just have a little bit of a closer look at particularly the plagues part of that. The plagues of Egypt, and particularly the last plague. But does anyone remember what the plagues are? Does anyone know them off by heart? No. What are some of the plagues that you might remember if you grew up reading this when you were young or something? Nile turned to blood, that is the first one. Frogs, flies, that's good. Boils. Locust. Hail.
Fire.
What's that?
Fire.
Well, there was hail with the fire. What's that? Darkness. Yes, the livestock all dying. What's that?
Locusts.
You said locust, I got it in there. There's one more, it was gnats. And then of course there's the last one, which is the one I really want to talk about. What's that? We said boils. So I've got them here in a list. We can just see the water turns to blood. Frogs suddenly come out. This is the second one. This is in order. Gnats come along and just little biting gnats. Then flies on everything. Everything went off and it was terrible. The livestock die. for the Egyptians. Interestingly, at this stage, only the Egyptian livestock dies. The Jewish livestock didn't get impacted by it. And so theirs is increasing and the Egyptians losing theirs. Boils come on all their skin and everything, which is horrible. Hailstones and fire, so it's actually together they are. Quite a scary one, that one to me. Locusts come and then darkness over all the land, except in a little bit where the Israelites lived. The land of Goshen had light still, but the rest of it was really dark. Quite bizarre, isn't it? These plagues. And interestingly, every single one of these plagues has to do with an Egyptian god. Has to do with a god that they worshipped. And God was showing, I'm the real God here in this. And the last one is the most important one. The death of the firstborn. Interestingly, does anyone know how this had to do with an Egyptian god? The firstborn of Pharaoh. Pharaoh was considered a god. Well, he made himself. Many rulers throughout history have made themselves into gods, think that they are, and Pharaoh definitely was that. And his son, his firstborn, was of the lineage of God, and so was a god. And so here we have it again. So, we saw there in the death of the firstborn, though, they had a very different thing happen, didn't they? Had something to do with a lamb, didn't they? So let's have a look at this. This is from Exodus 12. I'll read this out for us. It says, "Tell the whole congregation of Israel that on the 10th of this month they are to take a lamb for each family, a lamb for each household. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a year-old male. You may take it from the sheep or the goats. You shall keep it until the 14th day of this month. Then the whole assembled congregation of Israel shall slaughter it at twilight." That's an interesting thing, isn't it? Be killed at twilight. "They shall take some of the blood and put it on the two doorposts and on the lintel of the house," so on the side and on the top there of the house, "in which they eat it. They shall eat the lamb that same night. They shall eat it roasted over the fire with unleavened bread and bitter herbs." So many of us will know this sort of story. It's the Passover, and the Jewish people still celebrate this to this day. Next week it'll be a big thing for Jews all around the world to have Passover while we celebrate Easter. Just think they're meant to be connected. So let's have a look. So what have we seen here? The death of the firstborn, and the important thing is this lamb, isn't it? This lamb that gets slaughtered. It's a lamb without blemish. Nothing wrong with them. Slaughtered at twilight, and the blood on the doorposts, and you're to eat the flesh. Do you think there's any figurative things in Jesus' life about these things? Interestingly, those that know a little bit of John's Gospel, the first time Jesus appears in John's Gospel, John the Baptist says, "Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world." So in his Gospel, he's been getting us ready for this the whole way through. This idea of the Lamb of God coming. There's a little bit more to read. It says, "This is how you shall eat it. Your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it hurriedly." So you've got to eat it quick. Don't really like eating things quick these days. Tend to get indigestion when I do that. But, it is the Passover of the Lord. "Take a bunch of hyssop, dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and touch the lintel and the two doorposts with the blood in the basin. None of you shall go outside the door of your house until morning, for the Lord will pass through to strike down the Egyptians. When he sees the blood on the lintel and on the two doorposts, the Lord will pass over that door and will not allow the destroyer to enter your houses to strike you down." Well, that's the key thing, really, isn't it? It's not that they eat this thing and have it on their doorposts. It's that what happens when they do that is they don't receive destruction. It doesn't come in and kill. And Pharaoh said, "Rise up, go away from my people, both you and the Israelites. Go serve the Lord as you said." It broke Pharaoh at last. Although, as we saw, it broke him for a time, and then Pharaoh got annoyed again and said, "I'm chasing them," and then went to That was to his peril. So we see here, we have the death of the firstborn, the lamb without blemish, slaughtered at twilight. And death will then pass over your household, and you'll be freed from bondage. That's good, isn't it? That's the story, and that's what they celebrate. Next week, we're actually going to have, on Friday, we're going to have a Passover meal. I'm quite excited by that, because this is what that is about. It should be fun, that, I think. So, oops, I went too quickly then. That's right. It's worth looking at John 19, though, isn't it? A little bit of it, to see what is this about. It says here, it was the day of preparation for the Passover. So it's the day when they're slaughtering the lambs, isn't it? That's what John's saying. About the 6th hour. 6 hours the middle of the day. So this is when the trial is happening, at the 6th hour. Behold your king. The song of the sea said what? What was its first line? It said God is king, isn't it? We've talked about this, behold your king. Therefore they cried out, away, away, crucify him. Pilate said to them, you would crucify your king? The chief priests answered him, we have no king if not Caesar. And they handed him over to them that they might crucify him. Yeah, don't need to read the next bit so much. This is playing out very much like the story in Exodus, isn't it? And when I look at this, the death of the lamb has some really similar ideas. The day of preparation, so we know, 6th hour, they're just getting, in fact, when Jesus goes out, they're just getting all the lambs ready just across from him. Because that's what they did on that day. Really important thing. It's the time of the killing of the lambs. Behold your king. What I love in this, it's quite incredible. He's hearkening back to the song of the sea, that God is king, and here's the real God who is king, but what are you doing to him? Who's playing the part of Pharaoh here? Pilate's not. Who's the hard-hearted ones? The Jews are playing the part of Pharaoh, aren't they? That's quite stunning, isn't it? The people that were meant to have been saved by this thing are now the ones doing exactly that to Jesus. It's quite ironic, isn't it? It's stunning. They're the hard-hearted ones, the ones who won't listen. And they're saying that God's firstborn son must die. Quite stunning, isn't it? That's one more bit I want to look at. After this, seeing that already all had been completed, that it might be fulfilled what was written, he said, I am thirsty. A vessel had been set there full of sour wine, having put a sponge on a stalk of hyssop. Stalk of hyssop. Did you hear that in the story? Yeah. Blood up there. It really is, isn't it? He's painting the picture saying this is exactly what's happened. The real Passover lamb has died on this day. Filled it with sour wine and brought it to his mouth. When therefore Jesus had taken the sour wine, he said, it is finished. Having bowed his head, he gave up his spirit. So when I look at this, what we have is finally the death of the Passover lamb. The Jews and even Pilate and all the rest meant it for evil, didn't they? They meant it for evil. But what they didn't understand is this is the ultimate good that they're doing. Because for those who take on the Passover lamb, who eat his flesh, as we do in communion, who have the blood over their doorposts of their life, they escape death. Jesus completes his role as Passover lamb. Death will pass over us, and we are freed from bondage. We're going to have communion. Did it last week, but I think it's apt that we do it now. Lou, if you can hand out. Thank you, that'd be good. Because this is what this is celebrating. Exactly this. That this week coming, we celebrate that the Passover lamb, the true Passover lamb has died for us. The true King has died for us. And we are freed from bondage. Death will pass over us. Yes, we may die in this mortal body, but life eternal is ours to have because the true Passover lamb has died. It's a wonderful thing, isn't it? Wait until we've given out all the communion elements. Thank you, Andy. It's interesting, they were told to put the blood sort of around their doorpost. I don't know how we do that, we've got to drink that too. But they were also told to eat the flesh, weren't they? And it's certainly more than just symbolic that Jesus says, unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you cannot have life in you. What he's talking about there is joining him in his life, in his way of being, connecting with him, the true Passover lamb. When we do this here, we do it symbolically, yes. But there's a truth that we come and we say, Jesus, we're with you. We stand on your side of that cross with you, knowing that you will rise and bring us to life eternal. Sometimes, this gets a little blasé, a bit, because we do it so often. But I know for me, I need to understand deeper these things. And it's not actually, it's nice to learn new things, but actually the most important thing for us is to learn the things that we need to know really well, isn't it? But just for a moment, I'm going to sit with the little piece of bread and a little, it's not wine, but we'll call it wine. And let your heart dwell on the Passover lamb. What that means for you. What that means that Jesus has died. And death will pass you over. And you're free from bondage. Let's just take a moment to let God to speak to your heart about that. So anyone that wants to pray, give thanks to God for what he's done. Lord, your people have celebrated this for centuries, millennia, that you are the God who frees. You are the God who looks down at our circumstance and says, I'm coming, I'm here, and I'll make a way. Lord, I thank you that you freed the Israelites from bondage in Egypt, but particularly that you did that to show what your Son would do for all of us. That the true Passover lamb has died and has risen. And that life is ours to have. That death will pass us over. And life eternal is ours. Free from bondage. Lord, I pray, open our hearts and minds to understand this, to know this, to live in this freedom. Bless us in this, we pray. Let's eat and drink. Amen. Hopefully this is a good start for us for coming into what we call Holy Week, a week where Jesus will die and rise from the dead. It's a good start, I think, to get our heads in the right space. Yeah. So we've got a few notices, and most of it about Holy Week stuff. The very first of them, though, which I'll click on, actually is that this Thursday night we have Bed Together here. So I'm quite excited by it. We're going to do a little bit about Easter because we're going to share a bit about what it means. Have someone share about that. We're also going to have an Easter egg hunt and a few other things like that. And we're going to actually have fish and chips that night. So we've talked to the people that have the fish and chip shop just around the corner. They said, yeah, we can supply you with that. So I'm quite excited by that as an idea. It's certainly something I grew up having fish and chips. Actually on Good Friday, we had it all the time and on Fridays. But I think it's good for the international students to learn what we do in Australia and why we do some of the things we do, where it comes from. So I'm looking forward to that. Should be a good night. It's a great night last time. I had a good group of students. Hopefully it continues, eh? And then the next day for us, we have a Passover meal and a barbecue. It's all in one at Oaklands Park. It's meant to be a lovely day. It's meant to be 25 degrees, which is just the right sort of temperature, isn't it? I like those days. So Oaklands Park, Wetland Park at 11 a.m. is when we'll start that. And come along. There'll be some eating with the Passover meal, but it won't be the full lunch. We have some leftover barbecue from our last Bed Together that we'll cook up as well. And we'll also bring along some hot cross buns to eat because that's Good Friday, isn't it? That's what we do. And so you can come along, we'll do that first, and then we'll have you can just hang around and enjoy the park there, play some games or whatever, go enjoy the wetland. I like going to the wetland and checking out all the little birds and things there. Last time I was there, I saw a bird I hadn't seen before, so that was great. Anyway, it was a crake all the time. Yeah, so there we go. All right, next thing, there's more. Then the week after, so we'll have, of course, Sunday will be Easter here. We'll have what we normally have. There'll probably be Easter eggs hidden around and things like that. You can go find them. The week after, Lou and Steve will be there, which is lovely. Yeah, right there. We might not be here because that road is currently closed because of the rain they've had, but we'll be up in that region. Now, Jackie's disappeared. Had a discussion yet. We've sort of talked a little about it, and Jackie said, I've got an idea to have, and I think it's good. She wants to have a night where you watch, she and Chris have been watching The Chosen, and there's some stuff in there. She wants to do a time where you can watch a bit of that and then have discussion and talk about it after. I think it's a good idea to do on that night. So I'll leave that to her. We've tried it and it works. It didn't work one time when we tried something like that. But it does. Ben and I have got that working, so Ben will be here to do that. What we will need that night is people to come help set up and pack down, because Lou and I won't be here, and Ben can't do it all, obviously. But you've got a couple of weeks to work that out. Excellent. Now, I don't have to put that in there, do I? Other than that, there's the banking details and all that. And those that give by cash, there's the little letterbox at the back. Other than that, God bless you all. Have a great Holy Week. Remember that Passover lamb died for you. Cool.
And happy birthday to Sonny.
Oh yes, happy birthday, Sonny.